The crystalline spires of New Geneva's diplomatic quarter sparkled in the Earth's morning sun, but Marcus Reed's attention was fixed on the towering alien before him. The Sentinel representative, Kyra Zerthan, stood nearly 8 feet tall, her iridescent scales shifting colors with each movement as she looked down at him with obvious disdain. "Your species is remarkably small," she observed, mandibles clicking in what Marcus had learned was their equivalent of a smirk. "We make up for it in other ways," he replied evenly, maintaining eye contact despite the height difference. 3 months of diplomatic relations with the Sentinel Collective had taught him that showing any sign of intimidation would be disastrous. Kyra circled him slowly, her ceremonial armor catching the light. "So I've heard. Your kind has managed to spread across 17 systems in mere centuries. Some find that concerning." Marcus had expected this. The Sentinels had dominated their sector of space for millennia, their superior technology and natural physical advantages making them undisputed rulers of hundreds of worlds. Humanity's rapid expansion and technological advancement had caught their attention, not necessarily in a good way. "We're explorers by nature," Marcus explained. "We seek knowledge and understanding, not conquest. Yet you arm your exploration vessels. We've learned that the galaxy isn't always friendly. Surely the Sentinels understand the need for protection." Kyra stopped her circling, towering over him again. "We understand strength. Which is why I've come with a proposal from the High Council." Marcus waited, knowing interrupting would be seen as a sign of disrespect. "A challenge," she continued. "To prove humanity's worth as potential allies rather than future threats. One representative from each of our species, competing in traditional Sentinel trials. And if we refuse? Then the Council will have to consider alternative measures to address their concerns about human expansion." The threat was clear. Marcus kept his expression neutral, though his mind raced through implications. The Sentinels could easily crush Earth's colonies if they chose to, but a direct challenge? That was unexpected. "And you would be the Sentinel representative?" he asked. "Naturally. I am undefeated in 17 cycles of competition." Marcus smiled slightly. "Then I volunteer to represent humanity." For the first time, Kyra's composure slipped. "You? But you're—" She gestured at his modest height. "The perfect choice. I've studied Sentinel culture extensively, and as a diplomatic liaison, my participation would carry official weight." "You would die in the first trial," she stated flatly. "Maybe. But isn't that my choice to make?" Kyra's scales shifted to a deep purple, a color Marcus recognized as indicating either respect or indigestion. He hoped it was the former. "The trials begin in 3 days," she declared. "They will test strength, wisdom, and courage. Few non-Sentinels have even survived them. Then I'd better start preparing." Marcus extended his hand, knowing it would confuse her. "May the best species win." Kyra stared at his hand before reluctantly extending one massive finger to shake it. "Your bravery honors your species, Marcus Reed. It will be interesting to see how long you last." As she strode away, her armor gleaming, Marcus let out a slow breath. He'd just volunteered to compete in trials that had killed beings twice his size and strength. The fate of human expansion might rest on his performance. His communicator chirped. "Director Singh calling." "Accept," Marcus said, already knowing what was coming. "Have you lost your mind?" Singh's holographic form appeared, looking apoplectic. "You're not a warrior, Reed. You're a diplomat." "Exactly why I have to do this," Marcus replied. "They respect strength, but they also value wisdom and courage. If I can show them humanity's worth through their own traditions. Or you could die horribly and give them excuse to label us as weak. Trust me, Director. I have a plan." Singh's hologram threw up its hands. "That's what worries me. Your last plan involved teaching their High Minister human poker. And it worked, didn't it?" We got the mining rights. Because you lost deliberately and appealed to their sense of superiority. Marcus smiled. Exactly. Sometimes the best way to win is to lose the right way. Just, try not to die. The paperwork would be astronomical. The hologram winked out, leaving Marcus alone with his thoughts. 3 days to prepare for trials that would test every aspect of his being. 3 days to prove humanity's worth to a species that saw them as barely evolved primates. He pulled up everything he had on Sentinel trial traditions on his neural link, beginning to formulate a strategy. They expected him to fail, to prove human weakness. But humanity hadn't spread across 17 systems by being predictable. Kyra might be undefeated, but she'd never faced a human who understood that sometimes the greatest strength was knowing when to appear weak. The trials would begin soon, and with them, perhaps humanity's greatest test yet. The first rays of dawn painted the Sentinel arena in shades of crimson and gold. Marcus stood at the entrance, trying not to look as intimidated as he felt. The massive structure, carved from a single mountain, could hold thousands of spectators. Today, it held them all, plus diplomatic representatives from 12 species. No pressure. You're early, Kyra's voice rumbled behind him. Most challengers spend their final moments seeking spiritual guidance. Marcus turned, noting how her ceremonial armor had been replaced with lighter combat gear. I find observation more useful than prayer. An interesting perspective from someone about to face Sentinel combat trials. Her scales rippled with amusement. Though you've already surprised us by surviving the night. The traditional pre-trial meditation had involved being left alone in a chamber with various deadly creatures. Marcus had spent the hours observing and documenting their behaviors rather than fighting them, much to the confusion of his hosts. Knowledge is its own form of strength, he replied, quoting an ancient Sentinel philosopher. Kyra's eyes narrowed. You've studied our ways well, human. But philosophy won't save you in the arena. The horn sounded, signaling the beginning of the trials. Marcus stepped into the arena, blinking in the harsh sunlight. The crowd's roar was deafening. First trial, combat. The announcer's voice boomed. Challengers will face the Sentinel war beasts. 3 massive gates opened around the arena. Marcus watched as creatures that looked like a nightmare fusion of earth tigers and reptiles emerged, their metallic scales gleaming. Your weapons are there, Kyra indicated several racks of traditional Sentinel arms. Choose wisely. Marcus walked to the racks, aware of thousands of eyes tracking his movement. He passed the massive energy weapons and ceremonial blades, selecting instead what appeared to be a simple staff. Interesting choice, Kyra commented, hefting a brutal-looking sword in one hand. The training weapon of younglings. Everything can be a weapon in the right hands. The war beasts circled them, their cybernetic enhancements humming. Marcus held his ground, staff ready, mind racing through everything he'd learned about Sentinel combat creatures. The first beast lunged at him, faster than anything its size should move. Marcus didn't try to block, he stepped aside, using the staff to guide the creature's momentum past him. It crashed into the second beast, causing both to snarl in confusion. Clever, Kyra acknowledged, even as she engaged the third beast in direct combat. But you cannot dodge forever. Watch me, Marcus grinned, continuing his strategy of redirecting rather than confronting. The beasts grew increasingly frustrated, their attacks becoming sloppier. The crowd's mood shifted from bloodthirsty anticipation to genuine interest. They'd expected him to die quickly, not turn the trial into a lesson in tactical movement. Finally, one beast overextended itself, and Marcus struck, not at the creature, but at a specific point on its cybernetic enhancement. The beast froze, its systems temporarily scrambled. Impossible. Kyra had just finished subduing her opponent through brute force. How did you know their weakness? I paid attention during my meditation last night. The creatures there had similar enhancements. Once you understand the technology, the vulnerability becomes obvious. The remaining beasts were recalled, leaving Marcus standing, untouched, while Kyra bore several minor wounds from her direct approach. Second trial, wisdom, the announcer declared. A holographic puzzle materialized between them, a complex, four-dimensional pattern that even AI struggled to solve. Now we see if your mind matches your cunning, Kyra said, her scales shifting to a focused blue as she began manipulating the pattern. Marcus studied the puzzle, noting its familiar elements. This is based on ancient Sentinel cave markings, isn't it? The ones from the First Age. Kyra paused. How could you possibly know that? Because I spent 3 months studying your archaeological databases. This pattern, it's not just a puzzle. It's a story. Working quickly, Marcus rearranged the elements not to solve the pattern, but to reveal its narrative. The hologram shifted, transforming into a scene from Sentinel history, the moment their species first achieved space flight. The crowd gasped. Even Kyra looked impressed. Third trial, courage, the announcer's voice held a note of respect now. The arena floor opened, revealing a deep pit filled with swirling energy. The void of truth, Kyra explained. It shows each challenger their deepest fears. Many go mad merely looking into it. Marcus approached the edge, feeling the void's pull. And what must we do? Jump. Without hesitation, Marcus stepped off the edge. The void enveloped him in visions of Earth's destruction, of humanity's extinction, of personal failures that could doom his species. He faced each fear not by fighting it, but by accepting it as possibility and choosing to act anyway. When he emerged on the other side, Kyra was waiting, her expression unreadable. You didn't hesitate, she said. Fear isn't the enemy, Marcus replied, still shaking from the visions. Letting it control you is. The arena fell silent as the High Council convened. Marcus stood straight despite his exhaustion, knowing this moment would define human-Sentinel relations for generations. The Chief Elder's voice rang out, the human has shown unexpected wisdom. Perhaps we have misjudged their species. Kyra stepped forward. He has proven that strength takes many forms. I withdraw my challenge and propose instead an alliance. Marcus bowed to hide his smile. Sometimes the best victory was making your opponent want to change the game entirely. The sun set on the arena as humans and Sentinels began the long process of turning rivalry into partnership. And if anyone noticed that Marcus's lucky escape from the war beasts had been carefully calculated to demonstrate human ingenuity while allowing Kyra to save face, well, that was just good diplomacy. The joint human-Sentinel strike fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the coordinates found in Counselor Vex's files. Marcus stood on the bridge of the lead ship, the Harmony, watching as sensors scanned the seemingly empty sector. Nothing, a Sentinel operator reported. No stations, no ships, no. Wait, Kyra interrupted, her enhanced vision catching something. There's a distortion in the background radiation. Marcus? He nodded, already running calculations. Dimensional cloaking. Advanced, but it has a flaw. Look at the star patterns. The massive viewscreen highlighted what he'd noticed, stars that appeared to shift slightly, their light bending around something massive. Clever, Kyra admitted. Using gravity itself to hide their base. But why here? Before Marcus could respond, space itself seemed to tear open. Ships emerged, dozens, then hundreds. Their design was unlike anything either human or Sentinel had encountered, combining organic and mechanical elements in impossible ways. By the first ancestors, someone whispered. The Shadow Fleet, the Chief Elder's voice came through the calm, they were supposed to be destroyed in the ancient wars. We thought them extinct. Marcus studied the hostile ship's formation. Not extinct. Evolving. Waiting. Those aren't just ships, they're alive. As if confirming his words, the enemy vessels began shifting form, weapons emerging from previously smooth hulls. Their movements were unnaturally fluid, more like predatory animals than spacecraft. All ships, battle positions, Kyra commanded. Remember the drills. Humans, your vessels are faster, take flanking positions. Sentinel cruisers will provide heavy fire support. The fleet moved with practiced precision. 3 months of joint training paying off as human and Sentinel ships maneuvered in perfect coordination. They're broadcasting, a communications officer announced. A figure appeared on screen, humanoid but wrong, like something trying to remember what humans and Sentinels looked like. Its voice came in both languages simultaneously. Children of dirt and stone, it said. You have grown numerous in our absence. The galaxy belongs to the shadows. As it was, as it will be again. We've identified their power signature, Marcus reported, ignoring the creature's speech. It matches the modified weapons we traced. They've been using our technology against us. Studying us, Kyra agreed. Learning our weaknesses. The shadow ships opened fire. Their weapons were devastating, hybrid beams that could penetrate both human shields and Sentinel armor. But they'd expected this. Execute Pattern Omega, Marcus ordered. The human ships scattered, seeming to flee in panic. The Sentinel cruisers moved ponderously forward, drawing enemy fire. It looked like a complete breakdown of coordination. Until the human vessels reappeared behind the Shadow fleet, their retreat actually a precisely calculated microjump. The Sentinel's apparent vulnerability had been a trap. Now! Kyra roared. Both fleets opened fire simultaneously. Human precision weapons targeted the organic components of the Shadow ships while Sentinel heavy guns hammered their mechanical sections. The combination proved devastating. But the Shadow fleet was vast, and they learned quickly. Their ships began adapting, growing new defenses even as others fell. We need to find their control center, Marcus said, studying tactical displays. These ships are connected. There's a pattern to their movements. Kyra's scales shifted to insight gold. The gravity distortion. They're not hiding a base, they're hiding a dimensional anchor. Marcus's eyes widened. That's how they survived the ancient wars. They didn't go extinct, they left this dimension entirely. And now they're trying to bring their entire civilization back through. A massive explosion rocked the harmony as a shadow beam found its mark. Emergency sirens wailed. Hull breach on decks 3 through 7, someone reported. We've lost 30% of our weapons. Marcus looked at Kyra. We need to end this now. The longer we fight, the more they adapt. She nodded grimly. The dimensional anchor. If we can destabilize it. We'll need to get closer. Much closer. Through that. Kyra gestured at the swarm of hostile ships. Marcus smiled. Remember the war beasts in the arena? Sometimes the direct approach isn't the best one. Understanding dawned in Kyra's eyes. All ships, she commanded. Fall back to Sector 7. Full retreat. The Shadow fleet pressed their advantage, pursuing the apparently routed Alliance forces. Their dimensional anchor pulsed with dark energy, preparing to bring more of their kind through. Wait for it, Marcus muttered, watching the enemy ships cluster together. Wait for it. Now. Every Alliance ship activated their dimensional drive simultaneously, not to flee, but to create a massive gravitational pulse. The Shadow fleet's own momentum carried them into the wave. Space twisted. The dimensional anchor, already under immense strain, began to collapse in on itself. Shadow ships were torn apart as their organic components were pulled into one dimension, their mechanical parts into another. Full power to forward shields. Marcus ordered as the dimensional shockwave approached. Brace for impact. The harmony shuddered as reality itself seemed to tear apart around them. Emergency systems screamed warnings as the ship's structural integrity was tested to its limits. Then, suddenly, silence. Where the shadow fleet had been, only debris remained. The dimensional anchor was gone, its connection to the shadow realm severed. Damage report? Kyra asked, helping Marcus back to his feet. Extensive, he groaned. But we're alive. All ships reporting in, casualties minimal. The bridge crew, human and sentinel alike, began to cheer. But Marcus noticed Kyra's troubled expression. What is it? That was too easy, she said quietly. If these were the same shadows from our ancient wars. Marcus nodded grimly. This was just a scouting force. Testing our defenses, learning our capabilities. They'll be back. Yes. He managed a smile. But next time, they'll face a united galaxy. No more manipulation, no more playing species against each other. Kyra's scales shifted to resolute silver. Then we have work to do. As the fleet began recovery operations, Marcus stared at the starfield where the dimensional anchor had been. The shadows had failed to keep humanity and the sentinels apart. Their next attempt would find something they hadn't counted on, two species that were stronger together than apart. The real war was just beginning. 6 months after the Shadow Fleet encounter, the combined Human Sentinel Defense Council gathered in Earth's orbital station, Unity. Marcus stood before the assembled representatives, presenting the latest intelligence. They're not just coming back, he explained, manipulating the holographic star map. They're already here. Small incursions, testing our borders, probing for weaknesses. Kyra, now appointed as Joint Fleet Commander, stepped forward. Our deep space sensors have detected dimensional disturbances in 17 sectors. Each matches the signature from our previous encounter. But they haven't attacked, a human admiral noted. Why? Because they're learning, Marcus said. The shadows adapt. Last time, they tried to keep our species divided. Now they're studying how we work together. The station shuddered suddenly. Alert sirens blared. Multiple dimensional breaches detected, a sensor operator shouted. They're surrounding the station. Not studying anymore, Kyra growled. All ships, battle stations. The view outside Unity's windows became a chaos of twisted space as shadow vessels emerged. But these were different, darker, more evolved, combining the best aspects of both human and sentinel technology with their own organic horror. They've been watching our joint patrol patterns, Marcus realized. Waiting for this meeting. They want to decapitate both our commands at once. Clever, Kyra admitted, already coordinating the defense fleet. But predictable. Marcus smiled. Exactly. Initiate Protocol Phoenix. The station's outer hull suddenly separated, revealing layers of hidden weapon systems, a joint project months in the making. Unity wasn't just a diplomatic station, it was a fortress. Remember, Marcus broadcasted to all ships, they adapt to whatever we throw at them. So don't stick to one strategy. Keep changing tactics. Keep them guessing. The battle erupted in earnest. Shadow ships attacked with weapons designed to counter their last encounter, only to find their targets using completely different defense systems. Human vessels performed maneuvers that should have torn them apart, their hulls reinforced with Sentinel technology. Sentinel cruisers displayed impossible agility, upgraded with human navigation systems. But the shadows were still overwhelming in numbers. Unity's shields began to fail under concentrated fire. We need something they can't adapt to, Kyra said, watching another defense platform fall. Something completely unexpected. Marcus studied the tactical display, mind racing. What if we don't fight them at all? What? They're organic mechanical hybrids, right? Living ships. And what's the one thing living organisms can't adapt to instantly? Understanding dawned in Kyra's eyes. Peace. Marcus opened a channel to the Shadow Fleet. The same distorted figure appeared, expecting surrender. Your resistance is futile, it began. We agree, Marcus interrupted. Which is why we're offering an alliance. The figure paused, its form flickering in confusion. Deception. You cannot deceive us. No deception. You've proven you can adapt to anything we throw at you. So adapt to this, we want to learn from you. Work with you. Evolve together. The shadow ships faltered, their attack patterns becoming erratic as the hive mind tried to process this unexpected development. Your species are primitive, the figure insisted, but with less certainty. You cannot comprehend. Can't we? Kyra joined in. You've studied us. Seen how we've grown stronger together. Why waste resources fighting when we could all benefit? The Shadow Fleet's attack ceased entirely as confusion spread through their network. They had conquered countless civilizations, adapted to every weapon, but never encountered genuine offers of cooperation. This does not compute, the figure struggled. Our purpose is dominance. Your purpose is survival and evolution, Marcus corrected. Just like ours. And evolution through cooperation can be more powerful than evolution through conflict. The shadow ships began to move erratically, their organic components fighting with their mechanical logic. They had evolved to adapt to any situation, and now that very adaptation was forcing them to consider peace as a viable strategy. Across the fleet, shadow vessels started powering down weapons. Some began shifting form, returning to more neutral configurations. The figure on screen flickered rapidly between forms before stabilizing into something new, a genuine attempt to find common ground between all three species. Perhaps. It said slowly, perhaps we have evolved beyond our original purpose. The battle ended not with destruction, but with dialogue. In the months that followed, careful cooperation began. Shadow organic technology revolutionized medicine. Human creativity helped them explore new forms of existence. Sentinel wisdom provided balance and direction. Years later, Marcus stood with Kyra on Unity's observation deck, watching ships of all three species working together on a new dimensional exploration project. Did you know it would work? She asked. Offering peace at that moment? Not really, he admitted. But I knew they'd evolve to adapt to anything. Including the possibility of friendship. Humans, Kyra's scales shifted to fond amber. Always finding the most improbable solutions. Says the Sentinel who agreed to command a joint fleet with a primitive species. They watched as a shadow ship transformed itself into a beautiful geometric pattern, their new form of art. The galaxy's changing, Kyra observed. That's what life does, Marcus replied. It adapts. It grows. It finds new ways to thrive. Below them, Unity Station continued its orbit, a symbol of how three species had learned that the greatest evolution wasn't in weapons or defenses, but in the ability to turn enemies into allies. The shadows had come seeking conquest but found something far more valuable, a future where adaptation meant more than just survival. The stars stretched out before them, full of new possibilities. And somewhere out there, other species waited to learn the same lesson, that true strength wasn't in standing alone, but in standing together.